Good afternoon and welcome to Jumpstart's monthly expert-led webinar, today with Todd Thompson on running your business better with EOS. I'm Lauren Smith-Petta and I serve as Jumpstart's Director of Education. Jumpstart offers this webinar series on a different topic every month, along with a variety of other educational programs and events. Visit jumpstartinc.org/smallbiz to explore our services. Before I introduce our presenter today, just a few typical housekeeping items. The presentation session will be 60 to 90 minutes. Necessary remaining time will be set aside for the Q&A portion. In your toolbar, you should be able to see an important communication tool at your disposal today, the Q&A. I will be closely monitoring the Q&A throughout, so please place your questions there. If it's time sensitive, I'll interrupt Todd and he'll address it at the time. If it can wait until the end, I will wait till the end. At the end of today's session and in a follow-up email, you'll receive a brief survey. We appreciate your feedback as it allows us to continue to bring in wonderful experts like Todd to teach valuable lessons for free. All right, without further ado, allow me to introduce our presenter today, Todd Thompson. Todd will be speaking with you about how you can run your business better. Todd has lots of experience in this area. After serving in leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies, Todd started a business, grew and sold 2 businesses, and has successfully run multiple businesses over the last 25 years. Not to mention, this is an encore performance for Todd as he did a branding webinar for us early in the year, so he's becoming a favorite. Todd, over to you. Welcome back.
Thanks, Lauren. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for agreeing to spend part of your day. I hope that you find it useful. And look forward to sharing how to run your business better using EOS. As Lauren mentioned, please ask questions as we go through if you have them. And again, I'm happy to stop if it's a pertinent question of a slide we just went over or a topic and we want to dig into it right then, that's fine. Or we will have time at the end as well. All right. So I'm going to explain what EOS is in an upcoming slide, but let's go ahead and get started here. So we're talking about the joys of running a small business. And I recognize that the folks on the phone, everybody here probably represents a fairly wide continuum of where you're at with your small business. I understand that some are debating starting a small business. Some are in the very early stages of creating their business. Others have an established business. And so I'm hopeful and I believe that this presentation will be relevant to you no matter what stage you're in, no matter where you're at on that continuum. So if it's really early stage, what this information should do is give you a construct and a process to think about as you establish your business. If your business is established and you're starting to get going, it's much the same, right? Here's going to be a construct and a set of processes and tools to use to really get your business humming. And then the third point on the continuum that I mentioned, if you've got a business and it's running, here's a way to optimize it, to run it better. And if you're in a business now and you've been running a business, you know that this picture is pretty apt, right? Running a business is a lot like surfing. And you hope the arrow ends up going up like this. Doesn't always, but you sure hope it does. But it feels like you are riding waves at times, doing the best you can to stay above the water and not in the water. And so what I wanted to do actually was start by establishing some of the core frustrations that we see across the board among our smaller and mid-sized businesses that we work with, and see if these might ring a bell, because for each of these frustrations, we're going to provide an answer upcoming. So control. A lot of businesses find that control is a big frustration, especially those that have been around for a little while. You know, in the early days, you're controlling everything. You're right. You are on top of everything. You know where everything is at. As the business grows, which you hope it does, right, that control starts to slip a little bit from your fingers. You can't be there for everything. You can't know every decision that's being made. So control is a frustration. You feel like you're out of control at times. Profit. There never seems to be enough profit, right? Where's all that money going? That's a big frustration of where the expenses start to exceed what the expectation was for those expenses. People, this might be the biggest frustration of all. How do I make sure I've got the right people and they're doing the right jobs and they're happy doing them? This is a real challenge and a frustration. This notion of hitting the ceiling. And what I mean by this is, again, this is for folks that have been in business for a little while. If you're fortunate, you see progress in your business. You're adding clients or selling more widgets or services, and hopefully that arrow is going more up than sideways or down, that revenue arrow over time. But at some point, it often happens that businesses will hit the ceiling. It just feels like you have reached the level that you're going to reach, and you have a hard time breaking through that ceiling. That's a common frustration. And the last one is this notion about nothing's working. And what I mean by this is there's no shortage of business how-tos out there. And a lot of business leaders will go to seminars, read books, try to institute these pieces of new knowledge that they've gained or new tools that they have accessed. And for a variety of reasons, they don't seem to work. They don't seem to have the magic effect. And the reason for that is that there's no magic to really running a business. And we're going to get into that in some detail coming up. So these are the common frustrations. Perhaps you see yourself in some of these frustrations. And so the good news is we're going to address each one of those coming up here. So what do you need to have a successful business? Well, the first thing you got to have is demand. You got to have something that somebody wants to pay you for. And for many of you, I believe, especially in the jumpstart ecosphere, because it tends to be more early stage, this is where a lot of you are right now. So how do you know what the demand is? And how do you make sure you've got a product market fit? So I do consulting, business consulting in a number of different areas. This is one area that I do that in. If you're interested in talking more about that, we can do that outside of this call. But what EOS is about, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, what this is about is really once you have a product established, and now how do you run your business more effectively? But you don't have a business, right, if there's no demand for what you're selling, right? I know that's a bit of a duh, but that's where it starts, right? And again, I can be helpful to you if you'd like to talk more about that. Here is now, assuming you have demand, the next thing you got to have something that we call vision. And this is more of a broad topic here. When I say vision, I'm talking about who are you as a company? What do you stand for? What business are you in? Where are you planning to be out there a ways in the longer term? Where are you planning to be in the midterm and then in the shorter term? That's all under this notion of vision. Like, where are we going? And how are we going to get there? What's your core marketing strategy to get there, right? So successful businesses have a clear vision of where they're headed. Traction. It is the opposite of vision, where vision is brainstorming and capturing and clarifying who you are and where you're going. Traction is, do you have the disciplined processes in place that allow you to identify key projects, key initiatives, key deliverables that you need to make happen in a 90-day window, in an annual window, and beyond that. So traction is sort of bringing the vision down to the ground floor here. Do you have a process that ensures that you are accomplishing things? And frankly, this is the place where businesses usually fail if they fail. When people get good demand for their product, they're feeling good about that, and they're able to articulate a vision, that's great. But the traction part of it is what ensures that you are dealing with issues and managing through them. Okay, so vision, traction. Third one, after you have demand solved in terms of operating your business successfully is healthy. Do you have a healthy company? Do you have people employed who know what their jobs are very clear about that, are accountable and want to be held accountable? Are they coming in every day aligned with your vision and happy to be there? That makes them healthy employees. So simply, these are the 4 things you got to have if you're going to have a successful business. I'm going to be spending time on numbers 2, 3, and 4 today. All right, so here's the agenda. We're going to start by identifying the 6 key components that every business has. And then we're going to transition into how do you run your business better by optimizing those 6 key components. We'll finish with what happens if you're able to do that. And then I've got a couple of slides on how to get started. Okay? All right, here we go. So first, let's talk about the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And I'll talk about my journey as well a little bit here. So let's start with the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. So it was started by a fellow named Gino Wickman about 15 years ago up in Detroit. Gino is a serial entrepreneur, still is today. He was very involved in the entrepreneurial scene in Detroit, still is. And he devoted his career and has devoted his career to helping small businesses succeed. And what he found in helping them succeed is that they often are really great at the idea of what the business ought to be, and maybe super well versed in the talent required to deliver that thing, right? Whatever that is, whether it's financial planning or it's cabinetry, whatever that thing is, they're good at that. But what he found is that they've lacked often the basic training of how to run a business. And so what he did was, through years of trial and error, put together a system and a process. It's not a silver bullet. And a lot of what I'm going to show you today, I'll bet you have seen bits and pieces of it. But the genius of what Gino did with Traction is he actually pulled it together into a system and a process. And if you follow this system and process, you're going to build a successful business. You just will. You can't help but not to. There are over 21,000 businesses that run using this system today. They are across all conceivable industries. So myself, I've got nonprofits, I've got financial services, I've got marketing agencies, I've got CPG companies, are all clients, and we're all using the same system. Now, we're tailoring it, and you would tailor it to your business, but the core components, process, and tools will work. All right, so that's EOS. Now, he wrote a book called Traction. I would suggest to you that that's the first thing you ought to do, is read this book, Traction. It literally will tell you how to set up your company and run it using EOS, using the EOS process. And it will go into further depth and nuance on the subjects that I'm going to be covering with you today. So Traction is the name of the book. So a little bit more about me. As Lauren mentioned, I did start a company quite a while ago, back at the end of 1998. And that company was an analytics company in the marketing space. This is before big data and before AI, although we were doing some AI work. And eventually that grew into a marketing company, a marketing services company, serving Fortune 500 companies. Sold it to private equity, morphed it a little bit there, sold it again second time to a company called R.R. Donnelley out of Chicago. And so I learned a lot on that ride and on that lesson about how to run companies. I did not have the benefit of knowing about EOS at the time. I wish someone had told me about it. I wish I'd known about it. But boy, having gone through the training and now learning about it, and I hope you agree, I do think this is one of the closest things to a sure thing that I've seen in business yet. If you follow these principles, you're going to have the business will run well. I will say that. Okay, last thing about me. So I do business consulting in general and marketing consulting specifically, but I also implement EOS within companies, which is why I'm so well versed in EOS. So that means I would come in and work with clients to get this system up and running inside of their business. Okay. So the 6 key components. Let's go to the 6 key components. So imagine your business here is at the center of this little flywheel that we're going to put together for you. And these 6 key components that every business has starts with vision. So I'm going to repeat myself. So vision is who you are, what you stand for, what business you're in, where you're headed, and how you plan to get there. And the thing about vision is you need to articulate it and get everybody aligned around it. The second key component is people. You got to make sure you got the right people at the company and they're in the right seats. All good businesses do that. Third key component is data. This is the idea of running your business on objective data, key measurables, we call it, and not somebody's opinion. Okay, that's the third component that every business has. Issues. Every business has issues. Issues are those problems, those things that stand in the way, that crop up. Again, every business has them, but what businesses are not so great at often is solving for them. And the issues hang around. Well, you're never going to get ahead if you can't solve the issues. Fifth key component, process. So when businesses start, they usually start with 1, 2, maybe 3 people. They start usually pretty small. And as they grow, key people are brought into the business. And what happens is, as you are hiring these folks and building your business, the processes that they use are usually contained between their 2 ears. And for a while, that's okay. But it's not okay if you plan to scale the business. What you need to do is get the processes out of the minds of the leaders in the company and capture it. That will allow you to scale. We'll talk more about that upcoming. All right, last key component, traction. I mentioned traction before, so let me expound a little bit on this and note that traction is directly across from vision. So traction is the ability to ensure that you are accomplishing things, right? That you're actually literally moving the business forward. It's discipline and process largely. And as I mentioned before, this is where a lot of companies tend to fall down. All right, so these are the 6 key components. This is the EOS model. Again, every business has these 6 key components. And so the simple thought here with EOS is that you need to optimize these key components. If you optimize these key components, you will optimize the business. You can kind of think of it as the human body a little bit, right? So if the human body is in the center here instead of your business, you are made up of a lot of different systems, right? And if I want to do all the things I really want to do, be able to do all the things I really want to do, play golf, play tennis, whatever those things are, and feel good and be in good health, my nervous system has to be working right, my digestive system, my skeletal system, right? And on it goes, right? And so it's very analogous to that. All right, so we talk about vision without traction being a hallucination, and it's true, right? Where am I heading? How do I think I'm going to get there? That's a pretty picture, but if you don't have the traction component, you're not going to get there. All right. So you might think that the goal is to get to 100% optimized in all of these 6 key components, but you'd be wrong. That is not really a realistic goal because we're not perfect and the business is not perfect. There will always be something to work on in your business, no question. So what is a reasonable goal? 80%. So to be 80% strong or 80% optimized is really the goal. And we have a way of measuring where you're at today in your business, and then where you're at over time. It's just a simple set of questions, 20 questions that we ask. But by assessing those 20 questions, we find out the current state of optimization of your business. And typically what we find is that most businesses that have not gone through EOS are at 30 to 40% optimized, again, before they start their journey. Okay, so that's the model. That's kind of where we're headed. So now let's transition into a deeper dive in each of those 6 key components and talk about how you can optimize those 6 key components and how you can run your business better by doing that. All right, so let's start with vision. So with vision, we want to answer 8 key questions. And we answer those 8 key questions in a tool that I'm going to make available to you. So as we go through the presentation, there are free tools that I am happy to give to you. You will get a copy of this presentation, but if you would like any of these free tools or all of them, just send me an email and I'm happy to send them to you. I'll just email them to you as an attachment. And my email will be in the follow-up email that you will get from Jumpstart. Okay, so vision, 8 key questions in a tool we call the Vision Traction Organizer. Think of the Vision Traction Organizer as a mini strategic plan. So one of the things I really love about what Gino did with EOS is he recognized that when you're a small business, you are wearing all kinds of hats and you are super busy. And to be weighed down with responsibilities that have to do with managing things or creating strategic planning documents, for instance. I just completed a strategic planning exercise outside of EOS for a company out of Chicago, a marketing company. And the final deliverable was like 45 pages long. Well, you don't have time to do 45 pages. So how do we drill this down to the 8 key questions that if you answer them will allow you to have a clear vision? That's what this is about. So the first page that I'll show you on this 2-pager is more around the vision. It's kind of out there a little bit, right? And so we're going to identify our core values, okay? Again, this is what you need to be doing in your company. You need to identify your core focus. What's your 10-year target, your longer range target? What's your marketing strategy to get there? Then finally, what's your 3-year picture? That's more of the vision part of it. The more of the traction part of it, which is kind of closer in, 1 year and closer. What's your 1-year plan? What are your rocks? I'm going to explain what I mean by that coming up. And then what are your issues? All right, that's all on the Vision Traction Organizer. Again, I'm happy to send that to you, a template so that you could use it. All right, so let's start with core values. So what do we mean by core values? Core values define who you are as an organization. And by the way, your organization already has core values and you operate them. And they're frankly, if you're the lone entrepreneur or there's a leadership team that's running the company, it's sort of the collective way that you want to do business. You want to be represented in the marketplace. It is your culture. And they are really discovered, right? You already have them. Now what we're going to do really is discover them and capture them and share them. So we want to define them. And again, these are the kinds of attributes about the company that you live and breathe every day, right? And so we have enumerated 5 here on the screen. Doesn't have to be 5, but it is a number like 5. It's not 15, it's not 10, but it's somewhere typically between 4 and 7. All right, so the core values represent who you are and what you stand for. They're things that are more timeless, that won't change again over time. It's like integrity or commitment or teamwork or diversity, whatever those things are that are most important to you. And again, they're defining who you are and your culture. We're going to come back to this because we actually will use this in practice when we get to the people section of the model. Next is core focus. So the core focus is, what are you in business to do? And we break that into 2 pieces. The first is your purpose, cause, and passion. When people start a business, they absolutely start it to provide for their families, right? To make some money, make a living. But they also start it for a more emotional and in many ways more powerful reason. And it usually has to do with kind of your heart more than your head, right? And we define this as purpose, cause, and passion, right? And so I'm gonna use an example here. So let's say that I'm a certified financial planner and I'm going to start my own financial planning company. My purpose, cause, and passion might be to help my clients realize the American dream of a happy retirement, right? That's what I'm doing here. Yes, I'm making money, right? Yes, I'm supporting my family and helping my employees support their families. But my purpose, cause, and passion is really to be helpful to people who don't really understand how to invest correctly. I want to help them do that, right? So for your company, you want to define that. And the reason you want to define that, it becomes very powerful. It becomes very motivating. And it's sort of the reason you're in business, again, beyond the monetary kinds of things. All right, that's the first thing you want to define. The second thing you want to define is your niche. All right, so what is it that you do that ideally others don't do that makes you special and different and would be a reason for someone to come work with you? So back to my example of a wealth management firm or a financial planner, right? My niche might be, I have a planning process that is unique. It's unique to me, and I've learned it through all these years of doing it with hundreds of clients, and it's my process, and I can explain it to you if we meet, right? So my niche might be, I have a very specialized and proprietary investment management planning process, right? So that's more like how you're doing it, right? So it's the what and the how, purpose, cause, and passion, and niche. That's your core focus. By the way, it's important to define these things. As the company grows, we hope it does, right? And you add more people, we want to be clear with them about why we're in business. And we want them to be aligned around that. That's why we're doing it. The other reason we're doing that is when you have a purpose, cause, and passion outlined, it helps you stay focused on what you're good at in your business. There are any number of shiny pennies out there, right? Any number of opportunities that come to you that might look worth pursuing. And I find a lot of people that start businesses are more conceptual, more inspirational, and they sometimes follow those shiny pennies and explore them. Well, when you do that, that takes away from your core business, the time and effort. You only have so many hours in a day. And so by defining your focus, when that shiny penny comes along, that opportunity for a new business, let's say, or an adjunct to your current business, you go back to your core focus and say, all right, does this new opportunity align with what we said we're in business to do? And if it doesn't, you probably ought to walk away from it. All right, 10-year target. Doesn't have to be 10 years, but we say 5 to 30 years out. But this is sort of answering the ultimate question of what you want from your business. So this is often defined in revenue terms, I find, not always though, but often is. So like, what's the number one goal of the business? And the idea of identifying a longer term target, like 10 years, is to be inspirational, is to set this sort of like light on the horizon, that says that's where we're heading. So team, that's where we're heading. That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to build this business to be $20 million in 10 years or whatever that is, whatever is really important to you. But it should get people juiced, right? It should get you excited. It should get other folks excited. In business and in life, yeah, you get what you expect, right? And if you do not set an expectation that is inspiring, you're not going to get much inspiration. All right. Marketing strategy. Marketing strategy is generally, how am I going to get there, right? So it starts with, who's my target market or the list? Like, who is my ideal target for this thing that I am selling? Now, you're going to have customers, I hope, a lot of them, potentially, that don't necessarily fit the ideal spec. But if it's a B2C business you're in or contemplating, you need to tightly define who that person is that you're targeting, right? Because this is going to help you be more efficient and effective when you're designing your sales pitches and your marketing pitches, right? So what are the demos for this? What's the age? Is there a specific gender focus? Is there an income focus? Maybe a geography? Also identify psychographics, like what are the needs that they have that you're going to fulfill with your products, right? So define the ideal target. Then come up with what we call the 3 uniques. So if you were fortunate enough to have that ideal target across the desk from you, what 3 things would you say to them that would be compelling enough to make them buy? That's what you're doing here. And each of the 3 don't have to be unique in and of themselves, but together they should be pretty unique, right? This is what I do. So again, with my financial planning example that I'm using of a company, it might be, you know, we have this special process to build a plan that no one else has. We have highly skilled and trained employees, and perhaps there's some technology that I'm offering that's different from the combination. When you take all 3 of those, it's hard to match. There aren't many people around that are competitors of mine that, when you take those 3 things, can duplicate what I can offer you. So that's the 3 uniques. This becomes your copy platform, right? This becomes your elevator pitch when you're talking to your target market. Third thing, proven process. And by this, we mean, what is the process that I use when I work with my customers? And it's really helpful to capture this on one page in a graphic form. So think of it like as an infographic, and it's usually a flow chart of some kind. And so it identifies the major steps that you go through when working with a customer. And the reason it's helpful is that you can use it when you're in customer or prospect meetings. Hey, if you work with my financial planning firm, here's how it works. First, we sit down and we do a needs assessment, right? That's the first thing we do. And it's a 24 question survey, and I'll walk through it with you. Then we determine what your goals are going to be, right? That's step 2. And then step 3 might be, then we come back with our initial recommendation on what kinds of investments look the best, and on you would go. And these are typically 5 steps. Again, somewhere between 4 and 7 is sort of the magic number for a lot of these kinds of lists, and that's the case here. But you want to do it graphically. The other reason it's helpful to have this process about how you work with your customers is it's clarifying for your internal audiences, right? So when people are in the firm, they can see, okay, got it. This is how we work with clients. Oh, and I can see where I contribute to that. Very helpful. Got it. New employee comes in, you sit with them, you say, here's our process, right? On one page, graphical, simple. 4th thing is guarantee. This is an optional. You don't have to have it. And the guarantee, it could be a promise instead of a literal guarantee. But the idea with a guarantee is you want to take a potential objection off the table, right? That's the idea here. So I'm talking to you. I'm trying to convince you to become part of my financial planning company, to be a client of mine or ours. And so if there's a promise I can make to you that would remove a potential obstacle of you saying yes, this is the place to do it. All right, that's the marketing strategy. 3-year picture. So in 3 years, identify that date. What should my revenue be? What do I want my profit to be? And then I'm going to pick a 3rd measurable here that is important to my business. So for me, as a financial planner in my fictitious company that I'm using here, in my investment management company, it might be number of clients, or it might be a net promoter score or a customer satisfaction score. That might be my 3rd measurable. And then we want you to answer this question 3 years out. What does the company look like in 3 years? And it's meant to be a thoughtful question rather than a set of specific goals. When we get to the 1-year plan, we're going to have specific goals. But for this, it's a little bit more qualitative, or can be. Yes, we are always trying to identify targets that have numbers associated with them, so we know if we actually achieved it or not. No question about that. But in this case, it gives you or the team that comprises the leadership of the company the opportunity to articulate maybe some softer things as well. Boy, I want this to be a really diverse company, clearly diverse, for instance. That could be one. I want this to be in our market, one of the companies that people most want to come work for. In addition to, boy, I'd like to open up satellite offices in 3 other states by year 3, whatever those things look like. So guys, when you're doing the Vision Traction Organizer, if it's your own business and you're the only person, sole proprietor, that's fine. Do it for yourself. But if you have a business that has more employees, you start with the leadership team, whoever comprises your leadership team. And you want to do this whole thing together, these 8 questions, because you're going to encourage buy-in, right? People will have a chance to speak their minds, to articulate the kind of company they want to work for. And that's important. It's important that your leadership team gets aligned on all of these items, the core values, the core focus, the 10-year target, the marketing strategy, the 3-year picture. Because if the leadership team, and again, that could just be you, but if the leaders of the company are aligned around these things and they bought in because they've had a chance to participate, the chances of success go up dramatically, because now they've got skin in the game. They were part architect of this. And as the company grows and scales, they remain part architects of this. And they feel like they've got more personal, I guess, credit, more personal input, right? That will help them be part of the team and drive it more. All right, now on to the more traction side of the Vision Traction Organizer, the 1-year plan. So we just did a 3-year picture. So for the 1-year plan, if we're gonna make those numbers in year 3, what do we got to have in year 1? Revenue, profit, same measurable. Now we're going to specify goals. Again, I'm going to use that 4 to 7 range for goals here. There's no magic number, less is more, but these are hard and fast goals I've got for the next year. And I want to identify them, because that's going to focus me, right? So it could be, again, a net promoter score goal. It could be number of clients, or reduction in errors, perhaps, whatever those key things are to your business that will end up helping you drive initiatives, right? That's what you're doing here. What are the key goals? So now when it's time for me to create initiatives, which are going to be rocks, we'll talk about that next, like what should those initiatives be? They need to foot to these goals, right? Rocks. So what rocks are 90-day milestones. So let's actually talk about this concept of rocks. So this is a Stephen Covey, if you've heard of him. He's a management consultant, and he came up with this way of thinking about time management. And basically what he said is, so imagine you are at a table, and on the table in front of you is a cylinder, as shown in the picture here. And then there's a pile of rocks, a pile of pebbles, and a pile of sand. Each of those piles represents a kind of work that you do. Rocks are bigger projects, bigger initiatives that take time and effort. They take up a fair amount of space in your mind and in your weekday if you attend to them. But if you attend to them and if you accomplish those bigger projects and bigger initiatives, it has a chance to propel the business forward. Pebbles, it's a step down from that. Pebbles could be smaller projects, smaller things you need to get done just in the course of doing business. Sand, even smaller yet, that could be answering your emails, doing phone calls. Human nature is the bottom example here on this slide. People start with the easy stuff to fill up their day, their week, their month. They start answering their emails, making their phone calls because it's easy. Then they move on to their pebbles, doing these other smaller projects, these to-do lists, right? Things that they got to get done for their business. And then they finally end up dealing with the rocks. Again, I'm describing the bottom half of this picture here. And by the time they get to doing the rocks, they can't fit them all in. They literally don't have time. They have run out of time. Yet, we know that it's those rocks that, again, if you are to accomplish them, propel the business forward. So we want to be more like the top section of this slide, where we start with our rocks, Make sure we have time for those. And then we fill around the edges with the pebbles in the sand. Okay, so for rocks, what we're doing is every 90 days, every quarter, because that's how people think, that's how businesses are run quarter by quarter, we want to identify the 3, 4, 5, maybe 7, but individually for each person on the leadership team, 3, 4, 5-ish big initiatives and milestones that you want to complete in your job. And if you complete them, that's a big deal, right? It is really important to the company, but we're acknowledging that they're harder to do, right? So one of the rocks is, what's our quarterly revenue going to be, right? That's a big milestone. Another one is, what's our profit going to be? What's our measurable going to be at the end of this next quarter? But then the leadership team will assign a set of these rocks to each individual. Now we're getting to the accountability part of the equation here, right? For a business to be successful, people need to be accountable. And when we get to the traction section, you'll see how we use these rocks to hold ourselves and each other accountable. Finally, issues list. In the process of completing these questions, these 8 key questions, issues are going to crop up naturally, and they should, that you want to capture, because these are the issues we're going to deal with. And when I get to the issues part of this presentation, we'll go into that in more detail. All right, so that's the vision traction organizer. So the leadership team does it together. That way they're all aligned. And then if you've got employees, and you're fortunate enough to do that, but if you're big enough, right, you would then share this with the whole team. And that gets everybody aligned. And it's no secret, right? The best companies are aligned. The best companies know why they're in business, who they are, and where they're heading, and they're all aligned around that. All right, so if you do that, then you're 100% strong. People is the next component. First, you got to start with getting the right people. So here's another free tool I'm happy to send you. Just let me know. I'll email it to you. And it's called the People Analyzer, right? And so with your company, you have identified already your core values, right, in this process. Now we're going to apply those core values, because the people that we want, the right people for our company, for your company, they will be people that behave in a way that's consistent with those core values over time. So what you're going to do is you're literally going to analyze folks on these core values. And by the way, when you're hiring, you want to share these core values with people, because this is the kind of company that you want people to run to. Conversely, if there are core values that you say you stand for, and the applicant does not stand for those same core values, frankly, you would like to repel them. You don't want them in your company, because long-term, it's going to be a bad situation. Because again, this defines your culture. It's what you stand for, right? So in this example, with this tool, we have these 3 folks, Amina, Raymond, Susan, and across the top are the core values for EOS, my core values for my company when I'm working in the EOS space. To be humbly confident, to believe that a company is growing or dying, to always help first, always do the right thing, and always do what you say you're going to do, right? And then what we're going to do is, for everybody in the organization, we're going to give them a plus if they exhibit that core value consistently. We're going to give them a minus if they exhibit it hardly at all or inconsistently. And then we're going to give them a plus minus if sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And then we're going to set what we call the bar, and that's the minimum acceptable level. And typically when there are 5, and by the way, this is up to you. You will decide what your minimum acceptable level is. But for most companies, I would say, at least the ones that I've had exposure to and have worked with, if there's 5, it's usually 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses. It's never a minus. So let's take a specific example of why it's never a minus. So Raymond's not doing so great here, right? So let's say help first is a core value, right? And Raymond's getting a minus. And by the way, when you are judging employees and you're actually literally using this sheet, you should not fill it out by yourself. unless you're the only person in the company, right? But ideally, you're having other managers and or peers give input, and you're going to put then a combined score on the sheet here, because you want to be able to make sure that your personal experience is combined with others' personal experience, not just you. All right, so for Raymond, if you are telling your company it is critical that we help first, that's a core value, and Raymond is not helping first. Maybe he's helping himself first, right? That becomes a little bit of cancer in the organization, right? So you're standing in front of everybody saying, this is what we stand for, yet everybody around Raymond sees this behavior, by the way. Don't think they don't, because they do. And it's going to undermine everything you say going forward if Raymond is allowed to get away with that, right? And so you need to have a conversation with Raymond about fixing that. And I will tell you that folks that get a minus typically don't stay around long, because again, they are disruptive and they take away from, because people, it's an integrity and trust thing among your employees. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. Okay, so that answers the question, do you have the right people in the company? Now, are they in the right seats? And so we believe in structure first and people second, and let me explain. What you will do, and again, if you have a leadership team, we would start with the leadership team first, and we would build out a structure for the team. We call it an accountability chart. Another free tool. Again, I'm happy to send it to you. So this is an example of an accountability chart. It won't be yours. Yours will be individual, but this is an example. So in this example, there are 3 functions across the bottom. So literally what you're going to do is either you by yourself, or your sole proprietor, or your partner, or your leadership team, you're going to say, okay, at the highest level of the company, what are the functions that are required to help us move this company forward and achieve our goals? All right, so in this example, well, marketing and sales, got to sell something. Operations, you got to build something, deliver something. And finance, right? Somebody's got to count the money and make sure there is money, right? Those would be the functions in this example. You would have your own functions, right? Integrator is the next thing. So you need to identify someone, and this is often like a COO, somebody who is day-to-day operationally responsible for the company, right? They are responsible for the day-to-day operations, like, and they are making decisions amongst this group of marketing, operations, and finance leaders as to how things are progressing and what decisions are getting made, right? And integrating. The integrator is responsible, by the way, for the EOS platform and for all business systems. And then finally, about half the companies we work with has this function called visionary. And you see a dotted line there, and I'll explain that in a second. So the visionary is often the person that starts the idea. So I'm going to go back to my example that I've been using for an investment planning company, investment management company. And let's say it's my company, and I started that company because I had the vision for it. And I'm good at the art of financial planning, and I know people, and I belong to the right associations and clubs. That set of skills that results in somebody being a visionary, the kinds of skills I just described, are almost always, not 100%, but usually quite different from the integrator set of skills. The integrator set of skills is, no, I'm about process, right? I'm about accountability. What are we getting done today and tomorrow? And how do I know it's getting done, right? And the visionary is usually kind of lousy at that, to be honest. Again, that doesn't have to be the case. There are examples, but I would say they're rare. And so the dotted line is the visionary, even if they own the company, and oftentimes they do, they can't be messing with the integrator and the rest of the team in terms of running the day-to-day. They have to agree to let the integrator and the people who are leading the functions run the company. Okay, so that's a sample accountability chart. You would create your own, and you would decide whether there's a visionary or not. There must be an integrator, however. All right, so once you identify the function, now you're going to identify the 5-ish roles, right? So let's do an example here. Let's assume marketing and sales is one of those functions you identify. Now, what are the roles? We want to identify those roles. And the first one is something we call LMA, which is sort of a catch-all, and that is lead, manage, and have accountability for the marketing and sales function. The second one, these are going to be, so does, right? If you're in marketing sales, you own the role of marketing within the company. And lead generation might be another one. And hitting the sales numbers might be a fourth one. And the fifth one might be account management, managing those accounts. That's just an example. Now it's time, again, you start with not the people in the organization, but instead you start with the functions. You create the accountability chart first. Now we decide who goes in those spots. And we use a 3-step process to do that. We look at whether that person gets the job. Do they get it? Were they kind of born to do that job because they get it? Do they want it? That's a different thing. They might get it, but they might not want it. And then finally, do they have the capacity to do it? Do they have the capacity to do that job? Now, by capacity, I mean, do they have the time to do it? That's true. But do they also have the background? Do they have the training? Do they have the experience to do it? And that's how you're going to decide who gets what job in the company. Okay? So you'll start at the leadership team level, and then ideally as the company grows, or if it is growing to the point where you've got levels underneath that leadership team or leadership person, you want to then build this out, and you want to use GWC. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity for it? Again, this is very simple stuff on purpose. Like, let's not overcomplicate it, people. That doesn't, by the way, mean you shouldn't have job descriptions. Yes, you should have job descriptions. You should. But they should absolutely sync with the accountability chart, because what you want to do with the accountability chart is publish it, add to it, make it available to everyone as the company grows. All right. Now we go back to the people analyzer, right? And so here it is. And in gray, you see the section we just went through, which is how do we decide if they are the right people for the company? Now we're deciding, are they in the right seats? And so for these folks, here are the examples. And we are looking for, look at the bar at the bottom. This is a yes, no thing. We are looking for yeses for sure and gets it and wants it. If they don't get it and they don't want it, they should not get that job, right? And the final one is capacity. This is the only spot where, as Susan Good is the example here, she gets a no for capacity. And the only way that you would let somebody have that job, put them in that job, if they got a no for capacity, is if they, if it was more around their experience, right? So the conversation is, Susan is great. She gets it. She wants it. She is a high achiever. And from, is she the right person standpoint? She passes. Or at least, well, I guess in this case, right, she has 3 plus minuses. So we have to talk to her about the plus minuses. But we think she can do this job with some extra coaching and with some extra experience. That's the only reason you would let somebody have that job and a no on the capacity. All right, very simple again. Gets it, wants it, has capacity for it. That's the people analyzer. So if your organization has multiple levels, this is what you would do. You would do it for the whole company. All right, so there are 2 kinds of people issues that you will run into when you do this. You got the right person, but they're in the wrong seat. That's the first one. Or you got the wrong person, but they're in the right seat. So the first one, we like better. We like it better because they're at least the right person for you. But if they're in the wrong seat, after you do your gets it, wants it, has capacity for it, what you're going to want to do is look to see if there is a legitimate seat for them. What you don't want to do, typically, is create a job just for them. That usually ends badly because the business didn't really need that job, right? You need to start with, here are the jobs the business needs. Now, who goes in them? That's the process. But a good faith effort to do that is required in the first scenario. In the second scenario, you have a more difficult problem. And I see these crop up all the time, both of these. And in my companies, they cropped up all the time. So this is a person that does not behave in a way that's consistent with one or more core values. That means they're the wrong person for this company, but they're really good at their job. This is a difficult situation. What I will tell you is that person's got to start flying right as it relates to core values, or they got to go. And the reason is, again, it's going to end badly and it's going to cause harm before it ends, right? So again, as I mentioned before, other people are watching. Other people are seeing that this person does not behave in a way that's consistent with what you say you stand for. So how can I believe anything else you're telling me, right? And they are talking amongst themselves about this person. And the integrity of what you stand for as a leader is at test here. You're about to fail the test or you're about to pass the test. And the only way you pass the test is you got to fix it. That person's either got to play by the rules or they got to go. Doesn't make them a bad person, just means this isn't the right company. Now, I know that's easier to say than to do, but what you need to do is start figuring out who can take that seat. You need to start interviewing, frankly, and talking to other people and give this person a chance to fix it. All right, that's people, right seats, data. So recall this conversation early where I was saying, we don't want to run the business on opinion, we want to run it on facts, right? So here's this great Jim Barksdale quote, which I love, right? If we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine, right? And a lot of entrepreneurial companies struggle with this because the person that starts it or the people that start it believe they do have their finger on the pulse. But you want to create hard data and run by facts as you grow, because an opinion is just that, right? It's how that person sort of sees things without perfect knowledge. All right, so what you want to do is create a company scorecard, another free tool for you if you'd like it. So the company scorecard is meant to provide a set of measurables that you can run the company by. So the exercise is, think of yourself on a desert island, and once a week, a carrier pigeon flies by and lands and leaves a piece of paper for you. You can't get on the phone and talk to anybody because you're on a desert island. Hopefully there's electricity and a refrigerator and some cool things to drink and pizza delivery. But in this scenario, right, there's nobody to talk to. On this one piece of paper, you can look at key performance indicators, key measurables, and see how the company is doing and what's coming down the road, right? And so what we suggest then, what we do with EOS is we capture measurables that are critical to the business that help us to understand how we're doing now and how we're likely to be doing in the future on key business measures. So here's some examples. Like, what's our weekly revenue? So this is a weekly scorecard. What about our cash balance? Number of sales calls, sales meetings, how many proposals, how much closed business? What's the customer satisfaction looking like? How about our accounts payable? What about errors and utilization of capacity, right? These are typical measures. They're not yours. You'd come up with your own. And the idea is to get 13 running weeks. Every week is a new set of 13 weeks in a row. And you would set a goal for each one of these. And then you would assign them based on the accountability chart to individuals in the organization, right? And then you're going to track. And at a glance, you got 13 weeks. So if this is the week of December 23rd, I can see that I'm, from a revenue perspective, I'm now off 2 weeks in a row. I'm a lot closer this week than I was last week, but I'm off 2 weeks in a row. And so the whole idea here is to be able to spot problems, right, that actually are happening in the business, because it's fact-based decision making here, folks, right? Or trends. So it could be a one-time trend problem, or it could be a trend. And by the way, it could be a positive, right? We could be killing it. And then the question is more like, wow, what's going on? How do we capitalize on this? We're killing our goal every week. Fantastic, right? It's more often used in the opposite, where what you don't want to have happen is 3 months down the line, the company is in deep trouble. And it's in deep trouble because, in this example, perhaps, there aren't enough proposals being sent out. There's not enough sales calls being made. So yeah, 3 months from now, we're going to be hurting because our sales are going to be down, right? We want to be able to see that before it happens, right? So those are some examples on that sheet. Here are some more examples of potential measurables. Again, we'll send this to you so you can have this. And if you run the business on data, you're going to be way ahead of running it on opinion. And you'll be 100% strong in that component. All right, issues list and solving issues. Like I mentioned, every business has issues. These are problems that get in the way of us achieving our goals, right? The issues can be big and monumental. They can be small, but what you need to do is solve the issues. So we have a process called the issue solving track for that. And we have something we call identify, discuss, and solve. Like that's how we do it. And so what we're going to want to do is not just discuss, because what we find is that discussing problems and issues is something of a pastime with companies in general. They love to discuss, but what they often don't do is solve, and they kick the can down the road. And so this happens a lot because maybe the people that are trying to solve the issue are just plain too nice, right? You're being too nice. You like these people you're working with. You don't want to upset them, even though there might be an issue with something one of or more of them are doing, right? And it's a personal thing. People feel like it's a personal thing. Well, it is not a personal thing. This is a business thing. And you need to have a group of like-minded people that are about getting results. And the only way you get results is if you acknowledge that there are issues that come up in the business. Yes, every business has them. Yes, every family has issues, by the way. Think about your own family. Think about when issues don't get solved in your family and they fester and they fester and they fester. Guess what? They don't go away. And it just gets worse over time. You can't have that. Successful businesses make decisions. It's better to make a decision and risk that decision being wrong than to not make the decision. And by the way, the first step is to come up with the issues list. There are many companies where I've seen issues are tamped down. People do not feel comfortable even raising the issue for fear they're going to upset their boss or somebody else. And for your company to succeed, any company to succeed, you need to be open, honest, and vulnerable. And you need the team to be open, honest, and vulnerable, right? You need to be open about discussing problems because you can't solve them if you don't discuss them, right? You need to be vulnerable, right? Because the problems might have to do with you, right? And you need to be honest. You got to be able to speak your mind and speak your mind in a way that is not derisive and not personal. It's about the issue and solving the issue. All right. So the way this works is once a week, when we get in our meetings, which we're going to talk about when we get to the traction section, we're going to identify our issues together as a leadership team. Or again, if you're a sole proprietor, if you're by yourself, get out a sheet of paper and write them down. What are the issues that are standing in the way? Do this in your once a week meeting, either with yourself or with your team. Then you're going to pick the most important one. So in this example, Andy S being in the right seat, I've determined, because I'm my own company or I have a team, we've determined that this is the number one issue, that should we solve it, it would be a big deal, right? it would push us forward, allow us to gain ground. Then we'd identify our second most important issue, and likewise our third. And then we would hone in on the first one. Having identified it, we would discuss it in the meeting. Each person would weigh in, and then we'd solve it. Again, this is simple stuff, folks. What I'm telling you, though, is the majority of companies don't do this. And therefore, the issues hang around for months, years even. All right? Now, when I say solve the issue, I mean in that meeting, you're going to solve the issue, or the solution might be you're assigning it to someone who now owns that, and they're going to be required to solve it with the team's okay. Once you do that for the top issue, you go to the second one, you go to the third one, and on you go. So that's issues and resolving them. Simple process, but very powerful. All right. Fifth component is process. We want to document processes, right? So here's a quote I like: don't let routine tasks suck up your time. Find ways to automate them. That's process. So you can free up your time for more important things, right? You want to spend less time on things and more time on people and decision making, right? So each department will have a set of core processes that they use to do their jobs. So if you're in the HR, or you're responsible for marketing or sales or operations or what have you, right? There are a handful of key processes that you go through on a daily basis that you use. And they're in your head, but what we want to do is get them out of your head and capture them on paper, right? And the reason we want to do that is threefold. First, we want to be able to scale the company. If it's in people's heads only, you can't scale that, right? It's not, other people can't take advantage of it because it's in their head, right? To scale means we're going to bring new people in. We want them to be able to do their job well. So if there's process that is associated with doing their job well, we need to know that, right? It needs to be captured. That's the first thing, scale. Second thing is it helps to ensure a good deliverable for whatever that process is. Because you're going to build that process using best practices, if you follow that process, odds are the deliverable from that process is going to be good, right? We want people following that process so they have good experiences. Third thing is the opposite of that, which is cuts down on errors, right? When there's an error, it's typically because somebody didn't follow the process, right? So if I got the process laid out and everybody understands the process, no excuses, right? We'll cut down on errors. All right, so here's what you want to do. If you are the leader and it's your company, you want to document it, but if you've got a leadership team, you'll ask them to document in the areas of their responsibility, their core 3 to 5 processes. And you're going to create a book, right? And by the way, when you identify the processes, we're talking about like the 20-80 rule, like only 20% of the processes that HR, for instance, human resources uses probably accounts for 80% of their work. So, and you want to just identify the major steps in the process. You know, we're not looking for a 25-page process on HR for how you hire people, right? We're looking for something like here on the screen, like identification of the need, defining the seat. You know, what's the hiring part of the process? What's the onboarding part of it? How do we make sure they are effective in leading, managing, and having accountability for that job? And then what's the termination process, right? But think of it more as a checklist. All right. Once each group does this, you'll create the way that you do things around here, right? And it'll be your company way, the book of processes. And now you have it. You'll build it over time. You'll refine it. But there it is. It exists. And what you need to do next is make sure everybody's following it. If you do that, now you've got process nailed. All right, last one, traction. Again, this is the notion of having a disciplined process to run your company so that everybody knows what they're doing and people can be held accountable and you're making headway. So you see these 2 bullets here, rocks and meetings. So let's go to what we call the meeting pulse. So there is a pulse of set meetings that need to occur within your company. And we're suggesting you're going to have an annual meeting, then you're going to do quarterly meetings, and then you're going to do what we call a level 10 meeting every week. That level 10 meeting every week will be the same day, same time. It's going to start on time. It's going to end on time. It's going to have the same agenda. Here's the agenda. It starts with good news. So again, depends on how big the company is. If the company is big enough where you have a leadership team and departments, you would do this at the leadership team level and at the department team level, right? So let's stick with the leadership team for this explanation. So we start with good news. Everybody's going to talk about one good thing that happened to them in this last week. That puts everybody in the right frame of mind and in a positive frame. Next, we're going to do reporting only on scorecard. So recall our scorecard with 13 running weeks. How we do on our weekly measurables compared to the goal. To the extent that there's something worrisome there, we didn't meet perhaps some of the goals, we may say in that meeting, hey, I'd like to talk about that. You would drop that down to the issues part of the conversation, which is second to last. Same thing on rocks. And notice there's only 5 minutes for each one of these, right? So we're not debating, we're just running through them. So for rocks, we're going to go around the table and we're going to ask, how you doing on your rocks? And one by one, you'll say, I'm either on track or off track. So just like with the scorecard, if you're off track and you think it requires discussion, push that down to the issues list part of the agenda. Then we're going to do customer and employee headlines. Then we're going to do a to-do list. And the to-do list is also 5 minutes. And the to-do list is more around so every week you'll have to-dos that come out of this meeting, right? They're not really rocks. They're more decisions that you've made in the meeting. Somebody has an assigned to-do, and all you're doing in this instance is you're recapping whether that to-do was accomplished or not. The bulk of the meeting should be spent then on solving issues. 60 minutes devoted to that out of 90 minutes. And we suggest starting with 90-minute meetings because this is new. After 6 to 9 months, some teams get in the groove where they push it to 60 minutes instead of 90, but the bulk is still spent on issues resolution. Why? Because the issues are the things holding you back, getting in the way of you accomplishing what you need to accomplish. You must solve them. And then you finally conclude the meeting. All right, that's another tool. Happy to send you a template for that. All right, so that's it. Those are the 6 key components. And the simple thought is, if you strengthen, if you optimize, if you get to 80% across the board on these 6 key components, you will optimize the business. The business will run better. There's no question. I like to say to people that I'm in the happy endings business when I'm doing EOS with my clients. And I don't know, maybe I'll have a bad experience, but I've yet to have a bad experience. Every single client gets better. Every single business gets better if you use this framework, because you can't help but get better, right? And that traction section at the very bottom is first among equals. I mean, you got to have the others, but if you are not holding people accountable every week and accomplishing things and solving issues, it's tough to get ahead. All right, so that's it. That's how to run the business so it operates better. All right, so what's a process for implementing this? Whether you do it on your own or you do it with somebody like me, here's the process that we suggest. So this 90-minute meeting, that's essentially what we're doing right now. So the first thing I do when I work with clients, or you would do on your own if you're going to self-implement, is you would have full day sessions. Again, if you're by yourself, it doesn't have to be full days, however it works for you, but these are the areas to cover and in the order to cover them. So you start with something we call focus day. That's a full day. And on focus day, you're going to accomplish these things. We cover a thing called hitting the ceiling, where we talk about management capabilities that leaders need to have in order to push the business forward in an ongoing way. Then we create the accountability chart at the leadership team level. We identify our first set of rocks, milestones to accomplish. By the way, the first time we do the rock setting, it's for 60 days. We ask for them to be completed by the end of Vision Building Day 2, which is going to be 60 days out from the focus day. Then we talk about the meeting pulse, and we go to work on our level 10 meetings. I never explained the name, did I? I'm sorry. Let me explain the name. So when I talk to folks about how good meetings are within their company, and I ask them to rate it on a score of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, I typically get 5 is the answer. It's about a 5. Well, that's not great, right? So what we want to do is move that score of the meeting from a 5 to a 10, right? And when we conclude the meetings, one of the questions that we encourage you to ask at the end of those meetings is, hey, everybody, score the meeting, right? And we want to get to where everybody's scoring those meetings 10s. All right, so we'll do the meeting polls, talk about the L10 meetings, and then we'll start to build out the scorecard. That all happens in the first day. And then what we ask you to do right away, what you should start doing is working on your rocks, holding your weekly level 10 meetings, right? And there will be some follow-ups because the scorecard won't get completely done. There'll be some things to do. So we wait 30 days, get back together again for another full day session. And then you'll first look back and talk about, well, how are the meetings going? How are we doing on our rocks? Are there any issues that we need to resolve? Hitches that we need to smooth out? And then we'll look forward and start to complete the vision part of the business, which is, recall the vision traction organizer, these 8 key questions. So we'll identify as a team the core values, core focus, 10-year target. And in day 1, often we'll get through the marketing strategy, but for sure we'll get through the 10-year target. Then you want to take a 30-day break. There will be some follow-up items out of vision building day 1. Get back together again, have a full day session, and complete all the vision building. So this is done at the leadership team level, whoever the leadership team comprises. And you'll answer the rest of those questions. So you'll have the complete vision. You'll also have now for 60 straight days been doing weekly meetings. You'll also for 60 days have done your first set of rocks, and we'll measure, right? You should measure, well, did we complete the rocks or didn't we? And 80% is your goal, right? To have completed those rocks, right? And it's practice, right? You're learning a new way to run the business here. And so it does take practice, just like learning anything new. So the first 60 days is to get you engrossed as either the sole leader or the leadership team. Now we got it. Now, after vision building day 2, we want to push it to the rest of the company. And we start to roll into what we call our 90-day world, where every quarter you're going to want to take a day and you're going to want to go through a recap of how we did the prior quarter, from our rocks to our issues resolution. There's also other things that other training and education materials to go over as part of EOS that EOS provides to make you better managers and make the company more efficient and effective. And then once a year, typically in the fall, right now, November, October, would encourage the teams to do a 2-day planning session. Now, maybe you can't, maybe it needs to be 1 day, but in that case, you're going to revise all of the things that you had done before. You're going to go back and look at all of the key questions. You're going to come up with a new 3-year picture, a new 1-year plan, and then specialized training. So that's the process. So that's it. That's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So what's the result? Again, in my experience, this is about as sure a bet as I've had in the business world. Companies that operate using this system do end up achieving these 3 things. These 3 things are improved for sure. Obviously, to varying degrees. Some companies greatly improve and some companies are still in the process of improving. But vision, traction, healthy. Vision, who are we? What do we stand for? Where are we heading? How are we going to get there? Everybody aligned. Traction, what is our process to ensure that we are achieving our vision, that we are identifying our milestones, that we are addressing our issues, that we're holding each other accountable? And finally, healthy. If everybody's clear on what their roles are, accountability chart, right? If everybody is clear on the process to establish rocks and achieve them, and they're being held accountable, and everyone is being held accountable, and you are indeed achieving those, you got a healthy company. So those are the three big deliverables. All right, so how to get started. Read traction. That's the first thing I would suggest. Second, use the free EOS tools. Again, I'm happy to send those tools to you via email. When you get your email from Jumpstart, my email address will be in there. Just send me a note and I'll just send them to you. You can also go to eosworldwide.com and go to the toolbox section where there are the tools that I would share and other tools available for free. And then the last thing is to contact me. I am happy to chat with you about it, explain it to you more, answer any questions you have, or I'm happy to work with you in a more professional way. And by the way, what that looks like is there's no contract, there's a handshake. I work with folks and we progress forward and we stop working. And by the way, my fee, I do full day sessions and my fee is $5,000 a session. So you might have 5 sessions in a year. That'd be $25,000 in a year. But at any point along the way, if you decide that you're good and you're happy and you've got it, I'm done. Because the idea is that you learn this and that you run it, not me. All right, that's it. So if you strengthen those 6 key components, you'll run your business better. Lauren, were there any questions?
So far, none. I think they were all waiting for the Q&A at the end here, like good students. So what questions do we have? You can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. A lot of great information in a mere hour and 23 minutes. What questions do we have? God, you covered it all.
Okay, good enough. Good enough. Well, you've got my contact information. Should you have any questions that follow? I'm happy. It looks like there's one that showed up, maybe.
Oh, there it is. They said, please go back to the last screen. There we are.
Leave that up there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lauren, thank you. And thanks for everybody that took part in this. I know you're busy and I'm happy to help. Just shoot me a note, give me a call.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, for making yourself available. Thank you for covering so much valuable information in such a small amount of time. Really quickly, I want to wrap up with a couple of things. Reach out to Todd if you have any questions about traction or want to work with him. He's an expert in a lot of things, being an entrepreneur like many of you are too. Coming up, we have our last webinar of the year on December 13th on navigating the cloud. This Friday, we have our monthly mini-series on the state of AI from 11:30 to 12:30. And we have our Cleveland Impact Program Showcase on Monday, December 4th at 6 at Brown Stadium. Everyone, one and all, are invited to come network, imbibe, and listen to the final pitches of our 19th cohort of the Impact Program. Like I said, we will be sending out Todd's slides, a couple links to some of these tools. Reach out to him and complete the survey if you would, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Thank you, everyone, especially Todd Thompson, for joining us today, and have a wonderful afternoon.